I do know that Brenda Landis is unable to attend this evening. She had something with her son, and Jordan Heckman and Pam Fowler both cannot attend. So we should have 5 board members. So we're waiting probably on, is Diane going to be on the call, Barb?
No, she had kind of a medical emergency.
Oh, goodness. No, we would be waiting on Whitney Baker, Katie Maxwell, and Eric Oakman. John, can you hear us yet? I'm not sure he can hear us.
Not. That's John who, Andrea?
Kohler, he's the tennis player.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He was at some of our, when
Okay.
we had talked about pickleball before. He was at some of those
And there's
meetings.
Whitney.
Hi, Whitney.
Well, we got 1, 2, 3. What do we need, Andrea? 5?
Yeah, we need Eric and Katie yet. Oh.
I haven't seen Eric. Have you seen Eric lately? I haven't seen him in a while.
No. I probably messaged John to tell him he would need to turn his mute off, but I'm not sure he read.
Does he have a number? Do we have a number we can call him?
Well, you can chat via,
If I had his number, I'd give him a call.
I'm not sure I have it. I might have it.
Andrea, hold on a second. Andrea,
Yes.
is this Eric popping on here?
I see Eric. There's Eric.
Hi, Eric. I was
Hey,
looking for
Eric.
John's number.
I don't know why it won't let me rename myself. I always had the option. My daughter was the last one on here, but
Carol, you changed your name?
yeah, that's my daughter from her lesson this morning, but now I'm not seeing the rename option. So it is Whitney Baker, just
Okay.
for the record.
Stephanie, are you able to rename Caroline to Whitney?
It's usually the 3
Hi.
dots in the upper right-hand
Yeah.
corner, but
Let me
it's
give her a
not
shout.
there.
Who's
Yeah,
number
it's
717. Well,
Yeah, is that Katie?
where did Barb go?
Oh, look,
There she is. Okay.
I'm here.
There you go. And let me change it to Whitney. So now you're
good.
Whitney.
All right. Now you feel better?
I wonder if it's because it's recording. Maybe people can't make changes during a recording,
Maybe.
but yeah. Okay, we're good now.
Who's 717? Is that Katie? Lower right?
I'm not 100% sure, but
We need Katie, right?
yeah. He's supposed to be. Oh.
And John, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can
Oh,
finally hear
good.
you.
Okay.
Good. Okay. Let's see if we can. Katie, are you on the call?
Let's see. Look. What's Katie's number? Is that her telephone number?
I have to look.
Go ahead. The car.
No, she has a 386 number.
Oh,
Or, well, let me see though. Well, the last digits are 6606. So
so we don't know who the lower right is?
no, I don't know who the caller is.
Oh, let me make, please identify yourself.
Mhm.
What time do we have here? Whoops.
It's got 7:03.
Should we get started?
Oh, are we okay to get started with, despite not having Katie, or?
Yeah, we have 4. There's 7 total, so we have a quorum.
Okay, okay. Call the meeting to, call the August meeting of the Department, Carlisle Parks and Rec meeting to order. Our first, I think we'll do the public comment first, I think.
Yeah.
So I think this has to do with pickleball down at Latorque Park. So I think, John, I understand you want to talk about it, and Barb, you want to state your case, and then John state his comments. Is that good?
That's
Well, I
fine.
guess I need to know what the proposal is.
Well, I think if Barb talks, we should be pretty clear with that, right? Barb,
I would think so, with the help of Andrea, if she needs to chime in and help me.
Yeah. I didn't know, did you want me to start or do you want to start?
Why don't you start with what we spoke about, and then I'll chime in.
Okay, I can do that. All right, so I guess starting from the way beginning, as you know, in 2017, we met with pickleball players, and at that point, we installed pickleball courts, dedicated pickleball courts, and 1 line pickleball court on the Lee Tour tennis courts. That was in 2017. If we fast forward to 2020, pickleball in 2017, pickleball was a growing sport, and fast forward to 2020, it continues to be a growing sport. So what the pickleball players had approached me, probably, I think it was, I mean, all along they've been saying they want more courts, but I think officially maybe they approached me maybe in November of 2019, saying that they wanted, they needed more space, you know, wanted more playing space. Their original idea was to turn the tennis court at Lee Tour into dedicated pickleball space. We talked, and I think we had nice conversations, and we talked, and I'm a proponent to keep the tennis court at Lee Tour, because it's the Parks and Rec Department's only lighted tennis court. While tennis isn't growing in popularity like pickleball is, it is still a valid recreational activity. And I know the pickleball players recognize that. And so what we kind of came up with was a thought, and what I believe Barb is going to be proposing, Barb and Diane, although Diane isn't here, but I think speaking in behalf of the Carlisle Pickleball Association, but they're going to be proposing to install lines on the existing tennis court that we have at Lee Tour now, that would entail 4 pickleball courts, 2 on each side of the existing tennis court. So now, if I have my directions right, the existing tennis courts run north and south, and the addition of the 2 courts on each side would run east-west. So there would be 2 on one side and 2 on the other. And that way it would retain the tennis playing ability, for those tennis players, for young kids who come out and play tennis, because we know that tennis is still a sport and it still is used, but it would also increase the court space for the pickleball players. And they have, when we met, Parks and Rec was going to apply for grants for the lining of the pickleball, and we were also going to apply for roll-away nets, because the existing tennis court net would stay, and that would basically be the divider of the four courts. But we were going to apply for grants for that, but this was all before the pandemic hit in March. And then the pandemic hit, and we kind of took a break and weren't in touch for several months. And then recently, Diane and Barb contacted me and told me that they had a donor, an anonymous donor, to basically line the pickleball courts. They had that donor, and then it would also entail taking we already have pickleball lines on the main court, on the tennis court. They would be removed, and then pickleball lines would be installed. The only thing that they're asking is in the 2021 budget, that Parks and Rec budget for a roll-away net for the pickleball, which is about $250. So that's how I understand the request. Barb, did I depict everything?
The only correction I would make is that the pickleball lines would also run north-south.
Oh, they would, okay.
And in playing in this situation at other parks and locations, it seems to me that it's less distracting than what's there now. What's there now is our gold lines that go right over you would play over the tennis net. And as a tennis player too, myself, I think that this is less distracting as a tennis player, because the lines are set back. The actual tennis net is like the backstop of the pickleball courts. So the pickleball courts are really set back, and it's just less distracting. I should have probably introduced myself to some of you that Diane and myself are the ambassadors for the USA Pickleball Association. Currently, there's over 1,900 ambassadors in the country. And our oath is to promote the game, promote the sport, find new locations, get more people interested. And I can also say I took over the Carlisle Pickleball Association email list this year, and probably about every 2 days I get a couple people wanting to be added. And we're getting close to 150 people. That being said, that doesn't mean 150 people are all storming over to Letort. Those are people that want to know the times of play and so forth, and things that are going on. I guess I would say that the courts would be clear for tennis. Many people now have their own portable pickleball nets, and this would enable them to be able to come and set up and play. And then we wouldn't just have two courts with 15, 16 people waiting. We would be able to go over into the tennis court if a tennis player is not there. If a tennis player were there, they would have first priority. Also, playing over a tennis net, the tennis net's higher. It's 2 inches higher than a pickleball net. And it also stretches way beyond the sidelines of a pickleball court, so that you can't, there's a shot called ATP around the post. You can't do that shot on a tennis court. So there are limitations to playing on a tennis court. It's not made for a tennis court, it's made for pickleball. So this is a way I think could compromise with everybody, and hopefully the tennis community again would be happy as we compromised last time, and would allow us to expand it when we need to and when we can and when tennis players are not playing. So John, ask questions, tell me what you think.
I have a question.
Sure.
If I share my screen, because I have the satellite view of the tennis courts. I didn't understand the description of what we were going to do. So maybe if I pull up that, someone could walk through again what you're going to do. You guys mind?
Oh,
Okay, this is Eric.
Yes.
Eric's a board member, yeah.
Oh, okay, there it is.
Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think this is an older view because it doesn't have the new pickleball courts. So if you look at the court on the right-hand side, all right, that is an existing tennis court now. It's also lined for pickleball. What the proposal is to remove the existing pickleball court lines. They're gold now. And then on the south side, on both sides of the court, we would paint lines for 2 pickleball courts on each side. So essentially there would be 4 line pickleball courts within the tennis court. Does that make sense?
So the net would go perpendicular to the current nets?
The net would,
If someone was
the
playing on it,
tennis net would stay, and then the pickleball nets would go, the pickleball courts run the same way as the tennis court.
I see. Oh, okay.
So they would be vertical to
They'd be parallel to the current net.
yeah.
And the baseline or back line of the pickleball court would be about 6 feet from the fence. So you see
Okay.
how it would be back behind the tennis court.
Okay.
That would be the back line. And then the other back line would be probably about two inches in front of the service line of the tennis net. It would probably be there. So that would be the whole court. And the court's 22 feet wide by 44 feet in length. And so you could fit 2 with about 6 feet in between. But so you see how they would be back almost behind the tennis court. And so the lines would not be as distracting. In fact, you could paint what's called silhouette lines for pickleball. That's even a consideration, which are just another, like maybe a shade lighter than what the tennis court is now, so that it's not as distracting for tennis. I mean, that's another option rather than the gold.
I think when we originally had lines painted, didn't we have them blue at Moreland? Remember that, like a light blue?
Yeah, they were blue.
Yeah.
So it could be something like that. There's a lot of options with the lines.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that I understand now. Thanks.
John, you have,
Uh-oh. You're muted.
oh,
Yeah. I think he might be the telephone. I think that's John. There we go.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let me just start and just make sure you guys are all aware that I'm certainly not anti-pickleball. A lot of folks who play tennis also play pickleball. I do understand it's a growing sport, and I don't know how many people play pickleball in Carlisle, but I'm sure that there are a number of them. And so I just 5 minutes, I'll just go through my little spiel here, because I see my role as just to give you my viewpoint. I don't represent a formal group. I'm not part of a tennis association, and I'm just trying to give input that I see personally, and to some of the folks I've spoken to that play tennis, and just give you some observations. So I have an observation, and I have kind of 3 specific topics to go through in just a few minutes here. So just the first thing I'd note is there really doesn't seem to be a strategy here on growing pickleball in Carlisle. It seems to be a zero-sum game where to grow pickleball, in some cases, it means reduce the number of tennis courts. I understand this proposal doesn't seem that way, but I'm not sure that's the way it's going to work out. Now, I understand that the board has a lot of pressures and boundaries and constraints that they're dealing with that I have no idea about. And I'm sure it can't be pleasant, and I'm sure the last 2 or 3 months or 4 months didn't really help it along at all. So, I do understand that. So what I see is 3 specific issues that I would like to address for the proposal. 2 I think are not huge. One that might be a little controversial, I think is probably the most important and probably the most difficult to articulate. But the first view is the lines in the court. I understand what Barb said, and the attempt is made to make it less confusing. I can tell you, to have extra lines on any court, especially a sport like tennis or pickleball, which are also very fast moving, it makes it difficult to often see the lines or see the lines you want to see, because the eye tends to focus on other things, and whenever you're done with the play, you're not really sure what's going on. So have 4 courts. You're going to have 5 courts in 1 tennis court, 4 pickleball in 1 tennis court. I'm a little concerned that it might not be as unconfusing as we think. Now, the reality is I haven't seen it, so I don't know. I just have seen the 1 court that we have today and 1 pickleball court, and even that causes some debate sometimes. So that's one point. The other point is I would point out that 1 portable net shuts down tennis. The proposals put 4 on there, and I think 4 would fit. But I would point out that 1 portable net shuts down tennis, because you can't play with one pickleball court. But here's the one that I think is a little controversial, and I thought about this, and I even debated about it to bring it up, but I think I will, just so the board has something to think about and talk about. Who controls the portable nets? Who is authorized to put them up? So today we have the borough. The borough makes the rules. They put up the nets, they take down the nets, they lock the courts, they unlock the courts, they decide what can be played in the courts, and the borough, the municipal, probably the Parks and Recs are the ones who really make the decisions on what we're going to do on those courts. Is a borough individual going to be responsible for putting up the portable nets, or allowed to put up the portable nets? Will it be a pickleball designated person? Will it be anybody that plays pickleball that has a net that will be able to put up the courts? And why do I say that? Why is that a concern? Well, I heard what Barb said, that if no one's playing tennis, then put the nets up. But suppose someone organizes something with 12 people or more than 8 people, 12, 16, 20 people, what have you. And they come over and they put up the pickleball nets, portable pickleball nets to do that. Someone comes in and wants to play tennis. Says, no, you can't play tennis here. We have 20 people coming, or whatever the number is, and we have our nets up, and we're going to play here. Now, in the past, that's been done by the municipality, where the municipality decides if the courts are going to be set aside for one sport or the other. And in recent years, it's been pickleball, obviously. And so the tennis people know, they get prior notice. Tennis people know, can't play on the court today, do something else. And And then who has the authority to take the nets down? I think these are issues that really haven't been thought about or passed through, but I think there is room. So today, the pickleball and the tennis community get along fine. As I said, there are lots of overlap. But I think that there could be a potential for conflict, because if someone comes in and puts up a bunch of portable nets, and someone comes in to play tennis, and the nets are there, does that mean that they have the ability to reserve those courts if they get there first, put the nets up, and the tennis folks can't?
Can I just interject?
Not if I could just finish, then I would allow. I'd love to have questions or interjection. I'm just trying to give some information for the board to think about. And so that's my big concern is we all like to think that folks are civil, and I think for the most part we are. But I do think that there is a potential for bad behavior, either by the tennis people or by the pickleball people, if there's a conflict in the court. Today, there's not that conflict because it's first come, first served. There's no reserving courts, and the municipality decides the rules. If we delegate that to people that have anybody that has a net, I'm a little concerned that there could be some conflict there. So that's a concern I have. Now, I have said all along that I believe a long-term plan on getting the pickleball community their courts is the right thing to do. We keep making it a zero-sum game because it's going to limit the tennis at Le Tourt. It's already limited it to some extent because, just for example, we had 8 people on Wednesday play. The group that I'm in, there are lots of groups. The group I'm in had 8 people playing on Wednesday. We can't play at Le Tourt, so we went somewhere else. And that's happened quite a bit. And if you put the other pickleball courts there, I think that's going to limit it even more. And I just would like to see a long-term plan for the pickleball folks. This is not a long-term plan. This is a short-term kind of interim solution, I believe. And it's probably not the best solution. I still would advocate, as I did, if it was 2017, I didn't realize it was that long ago. God, time flies, especially when you're my age. I would like to see a long-term plan put together so the pickleball can get the accommodations that they really need, and they're going to need, I think, as the sport continues to grow. So that's my 5 minutes. So any questions or any comments, I'd appreciate it.
I do have a couple comments. The first one is about the nets. The nets are personal property of people. They're not going to be up all day long. It's not like the borough is going to come set up portable nets. The net that we have proposed that the borough purchases is on wheels. And this works really well in East Hanover Township. You just wheel it over to the side. If somebody wants to come from Carlisle that doesn't have their own net, they could wheel it out onto the court. If I go over and with Diane and several people, I set up my own portable net. When I leave, I take it down and put it in my bag and go home. So it's not like there are nets set up there all day. So I just want to get.
No, I understand.
The other thing is, if I could just say, it is a sticky subject, but you did say, well, oh my, we had to go somewhere else. Well, there are over 20 tennis courts in the borough. And when we don't have space, we can't go somewhere else. I know I grew up during the tennis boom here in Carlisle, and if we were to meet at Moreland and it was full, which it hardly ever is now, we would go to Dickinson. We didn't have the high school courts. Now there's 8 courts over at the high school. There's 2 over at the middle school. So we have, within probably a 5-minute drive, if that, you can go to another tennis court. But we can't do that. So I'm just saying to you, I know you don't want to lose that venue. I thought this would be a way to share that venue with everybody, and everybody's certainly gotten along. I've not seen any kind of animosity between the groups. And I haven't seen people, driving up constantly to use that tennis court when we're using it for pickleball and being turned away. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to be that much of a disruption. And, I think if you could take a drive to Hampton Township and look at their tennis court, which has the lines on for pickleball, you would see that it's just not, it's not as big of a distraction as what's there now, because they're mostly outside of the sidelines of the tennis court. So I don't know if that helped to answer or, quell some of your fears about having these nets all over the place. It just isn't the case.
Well, as long as the Parks and Recs Association makes it clear that you just can't come and get a group of 20 people and come over and set up your nets, that the nets are only set up whenever you're playing,
Right.
then I think that would alleviate a lot of the fear, my concern.
The only net
I
would be, the only
Barb,
net
I
that
thought-
would be, sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
The only net that would be hopefully purchased from the borough Parks and Rec would be on wheels, and that would be wheeled off to the side unless it's being used. The other nets are people's personal property, which you carry in a bag, you set it up, you play, and you leave, and you take your net with you.
Right. Well, as long as people don't come in early, set up nets, get 2 or 3 nets, and have a large group there without players when people are coming, then I'm okay with that. If you only set up a net when you have people to play, that would alleviate a lot of my
Right.
concerns.
I'm not
And I
leaving
think
my net there for other people to play. I mean, we set up our net, we play, when we're done playing, we take it apart and put it in the bag and leave. I'm not going to leave my net for somebody else.
I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that people might come early and set up their nets. They'll certainly take them with them when they leave. I just don't want them to come early and, reserve a court that's not reservable.
From what I understand, you mentioned that the priority would go to tennis players in an instance of conflict.
I didn't say that. I said first come, first serve.
Oh, first come, first serve.
Andrea
My bad.
said that.
Sorry.
It is, if
Couldn't that be on the rules on at the tennis court that, tennis has the priority on that court, Andrea? I mean, I think you said that would be one of the understood things. Did I hear that right?
Well, I'm not sure what Barb said, but she is saying that it would be first come, first serve. That's kind of what the rules are now. It's first come, first serve. And we have had problems with pickleball players with the first come, first serve type of thing. So we've had problems with tennis players too. So I think we'll have a problem all the way around, no matter what. I don't know if we have a sign out there that says first come, first serve now, though. I'm not sure we have any sort of sign like that.
Is there a time limit when you have first come, first served, or, I mean, do they get to play there for the whole day, or?
Well, we would have to make that. We don't have those types of signs up right now because we really have no way to enforce it. It becomes very difficult to enforce. I don't have a park police to go out and enforce that thing. And the Carlisle police, they're not going to go out and enforce that unless a fight happens or something like that. But we've been round and round on rules of pickleball or tennis and that type of thing. We just haven't come to any type of agreement, only because of enforcement issues and that type of thing. It's something we have to. Go ahead, Jake.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes, I should get, actually, before I go, John, you should identify yourself for the record, Barb, and our guests, and Jane. Just, I'm a little backwards on that, but, just so for the record, who's who, so that in case we need to get in touch with you.
Well, why don't I go ahead, and I may
Okay,
have some.
that'd be great. Yep.
I'm Jane Rigler. I live here in the borough of Carlisle. I'm a pickleball player, but 100 years ago, I was a tennis player. Pardon me. I believe I'm right when I say that the status quo with regard to who has priority is whoever gets there first. So right now, to the very best of my knowledge, the way we operate, if the tennis court part of that setup at La Torte is occupied by tennis players, pickleball players stay away. And they don't ask to get on the court, and it's tennis players. And it's tennis players until tennis players leave. Similarly, to the best of my knowledge, if there are so many pickleball players that it bleeds into the I'll call the tennis court area. Pickleball players play, and if tennis players show up, they wait until the pickleball players leave. I think that's how it's operated. I don't think anybody's had any difficulty with that. And I think if I've heard you correctly, Barb, you're proposing no change. I don't believe there's a sign that says that out there, but I think as John suggested, we're civil people, that's kind of how things work and have worked. I don't think Barb's proposing any change to that. I guess I do have a question, Barb, because I've heard you talk about people bringing their own nets. As what I have heard you described as the plan for what I think of as the current tennis court, but maybe it's more accurately described as the easternmost court. It's on the east side of the current tennis net would remain.
Correct.
And essentially, with regard to pickleball players who are playing on the north side of that, would operate as a wall, the back wall, if you would. And similarly, with regard to pickleball players who are playing on the south side of that current tennis net, it would operate as a wall. Correct?
Correct.
Barb? Okay.
Correct.
So I've also heard, let's forget people bringing their own nets. Barb, you play at a much more sophisticated level than I. You probably have lots of friends who have their own nets. Mine kind of rely on what we've got at La Torte. So for those of us who don't have our own nets, Barb, and looking at what I'm calling the easternmost court at La Torte, since you say the play would be north-south, in other words, one player, or pardon me, if we're playing doubles, two on one side, two on the other, one group facing north, one group facing south, there would be, shall I say, two nets dividing those two courts on the north side, and then something down the middle.
Wow, that confused the heck out of me.
Well, I'm trying to picture how
It's
this
just
looks.
one
Maybe
net. That's the tennis net. That's the back wall.
correct, but what are you using for pickleball nets that are roll away?
They're a portable roll-away net.
Yeah, so
Beg your
there'd be,
pardon?
I'm
And
sorry, there's
Would there
one
be
net.
one on the north, one roll-away net on the north side and one roll-away net on the south side?
That would be great if Parks and Rec has that kind of money.
Well, I'm just asking, so there were, well, I'm asking what your vision is and what you want. You just want to have one rollaway net that could be used on either the north side or the south side.
Right, I was just trying to get it started. I mean, obviously I would my vision would be to have more than one.
Got it. Okay. Well, forgive me, but I think this board needs to hear that. You know, as John has suggested, I think it's appropriate for the Parks and Rec Board to think kind of big. What's the long-term vision here? And if that's what you'd like eventually, again, were I on the Parks and Rec Board, I'd like to hear that and then think about whether, you know, what I'm now understanding might be something more modest will work. So you'd like to have, with regard to what I'll call the east side court, Barb, how many rollaway nets in the best of all possible worlds would you like to have?
4.
That's what I thought. Okay. And again, makes perfect sense to me, but I don't, I need, this is useful for me. And in terms of, you've already, some generous soul has agreed to pay to have lines removed and new lines put down. Out of the goodness of her heart, thank you very much, whoever you might be. But that would essentially creating 4 pickleball courts on the east side of current LaTorte setup, correct?
Correct.
Got it. And a rollaway net costs, you think, $250?
Yeah.
So four rollaway nets would cost $1,000,
Correct.
unless you get a bulk discount, right?
Right.
So $1,000. Were you to have the 4 nets, Barb, what would be the divider, or maybe you don't need one? Again, forgive me for not having gotten to Hampton Township. Is there anything that would divide the 2 courts on the north side of the tennis net? No, you don't need one. Got it.
No, we are totally spoiled by our Parks and Rec because we have fenced in the courts the whole way around. Just about anywhere else I've gone, there isn't a divider between the.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairperson, thank you for indulging me.
May I ask, can I ask a question? So I wasn't on the board. My name is Whitney Baker, for those that don't know. I wasn't on the board when this all came about in 2017. So I'm just curious why this one place is the place that everybody wants to play. You know, if there are other parks in the borough, or if there are other, like, why LaTorte, is it because of the lights? You know, why everybody wants to be in the same place.
Want me to answer that, Andrea, or you want to?
And I don't want to hash up like anything. I'm curious if there are 20 other tennis courts or there are other places. I just don't know why that's the spot that everyone wants.
Pickleball is a very social sport.
So okay. Initially, we were going to go to Moreland, and there was quite a bit of contention at Moreland of the neighbors around there, and it seemed that LaTorte was to take one court, because I'm not sure about the play at LaTorte, that we could get courts in a reasonable amount of time. I don't know if we'd ever have courts now, even if we had gone to Moreland. So we didn't realize the the growth we anticipated. We hoped it would be good, but we started from there, and it seems to have taken off. The other courts, you can't do anything at Dickinson, you can't do anything at the high schools. So the one place was LaTorte that we picked to get it through. Andrea, looks like you're.
I was going to say another big reason was funding. We had also thought of Valley Meadows. There's a basketball court there, but I think to turn the macadam basketball net and area there, it was about $56,000. And we had in our CIAC capital improvement plan, we had plans to resurface Lee Tort Park. So we were able to, without additional funding or without going to a fundraising campaign, we were able to resurface Lee Tort Park because it kind of worked right into our plan. We were able to resurface Lee Tort Park. And while we surfaced it, we relined it and added chain link fence for that. And I think that total project was about $32,000. Now, I did, just for the sake of talking about fees, I'm looking in our capital improvement budget to renovate the north side tennis courts at Moreland because they're bad. They have cracks. We've done crack repair and that type of stuff. Just for a minimal resurfacing, it's $65,000. To totally resurface that with a new type of resurfacing, it's $95,000. So it's quite a lot of money to do that. So. Yeah, but that's kind of how we came upon Lee Tort.
I think about, like, I'm a teacher at Lamberton, and we have tennis courts in our backyard that I don't even know if there's nets in those tennis courts. You know, so I don't know how things like that work. Like, I don't even know that the school district cooperates or is interested in working with groups to use their facilities or anything. But, you know, I was just thinking I feel like there are places, old tennis courts that are just dying, but I didn't realize it was so expensive to have them resurfaced.
And the one thing about Lee Tort is it's lighted. Within our park system, we don't have any other lighted courts.
If I may comment to you, Whitney, kind of talking with pickleball players this late winter, early spring about, you know, expanding opportunities to play in the community. And I hope what I say is responsive to where you're coming from. Among other things I said was, well, why don't we just take one of the other tennis court, you know, leave what we have at Le Tort, and let the east side court remain, or make it exclusively for tennis, and put a pickleball court at another location within the borough. Barb, I think certainly will say this, and I've come to appreciate the truth of it. Pickleball tends, in contrast to my experience with tennis, where you typically would arrange a game ahead of time and plan to meet with certain people. In pickleball, you just show up and play. And so if there are various venues within the community, you know, you may be the only person who shows up. There may be other people, you know. So I'm in touch, and I've also said, oh, you know, let's put it on South Middleton. Get them to build some pickleball courts. Well, again, then you sort of lose this ability to just show up and play, which to me is one of the most attractive features of pickleball.
Good point. Good point.
Yeah, we did. I just want to, John, if you could probably see some highlights of lines over there on the tennis court, because we lined it off. We've done, I think, 3 tournaments now over there where we've lined off those courts exactly how we want them painted now, just with temporary lines and the Parks and Recs portable nets. And we had people come from Virginia, Baltimore, along with a lot of the Carlisle people, you know, Mechanicsburg, just everywhere. And it was a wonderful experience. And that's not something that you do very often, but it's growing. And when I was young tennis player here, we had tennis tournaments over at Moreland at the end of all the lessons, and people come from Chambersburg, and that's not happening in tennis. But when we had just our like little tennis or pickleball tournament here, we had a lot of interest, and that's just how the pickleball community is. It's really a small community overall. When you go to Baltimore and play, and you've played them in Lancaster, and you've played them, it's just in tournaments there, it's just really neat. But I'm just saying to you that if you go over to those courts, or if you wanted to meet me over there, I could show you how the lines would be and where they would be. Like I said, they're off to the side on the one side, so they're not even on the tennis court. And then the back line is like 6 feet from the fence, so that's off the tennis court. And I think it's really less intrusive. And I really respect the fact that you're asking for a strategy for pickleball. I think I would love that, and so would Andrea, and she's worked tirelessly with us, but on a limited budget. You know, we're trying to make things work the best we can for everybody in our community.
No, I understand. I'd like to see that for pickleball too. It's just, and look, what's going to happen is going to happen. I've made it a point not to try to express an opinion about what should happen. I'm just trying to give some information, but it shouldn't necessarily be a zero-sum game, and that's kind of where I think we're headed. Because if we put those lines on LaTorte, I have a feeling that the tennis will probably be not played very much there. And while you talk about the courts at Dickinson and other venues, the high school courts are, I don't know if you ever played on them, but they're pretty bad. But regardless, the schools will not allow us to play tennis when schools are in session. Now, God knows when that'll be. That's but generally speaking, the schools refuse to let adults play on their courts when schools are in session. So that limits the schools. Dickinson has been really good. They told me 2 or 3 years ago that they were going to upgrade their courts. Clearly, they have not done that. So we still have Dickinson to play. Anyway, there were 6 municipal tennis courts. Now there are 5. And while I understand that there's still the opportunity to play tennis at LaTorte, this has the potential, I think, to take it down to 4. And so while we're talking about, public courts, Carlisle courts, it's nice to rely on the private courts that are around, but I'm not sure that that's something that the board, that's something that I'd ask the board if they want to rely upon. I'm not looking for an answer, but I'm just posing that as a question.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, Andrea, do you have a basis for an opinion about how frequently tennis players play on this lined Hampton court?
Hampton court?
I'm asking Barb whether.
You're asking me.
Yeah, I'm asking you, Barb. I mean, or when you're there, is it always being used for pickleball?
No. And it's, it's kind of like a tennis thing where if you're going to do that, you pretty much want to know that other people are going to be playing. So we have like meetup groups, we have apps that are out there. And, you just join the group or you don't join the group. Like there's a Saturday morning group, you join and you don't.
No, I'm asking Andrea, how frequently do you see tennis players playing on the Hampton Township courts that are lined like you'd like to have LaTorte lined?
The answer to that question because I'm not in Hampton Township much.
I'm asking Barb. Did I say Andrea? I meant to say Barb. Forgive me. You'd think these glasses would do something for me, but frequently they don't.
Okay.
We have never, there are other tennis courts at Hampton.
Right. So I'm just, but for John's concern that nobody will ever play on this court, no tennis player will ever play on the court.
Oh, they do. Sure they do.
At Hampton they do?
Yeah.
Okay.
John, I'm sorry, you had said you had 3 concerns. One was the lines in the court, the other was who controls the nets. What was the second one you said? I'm sorry, I think I was thinking about your first point and I missed your second one. What was that?
Portable nets.
Oh, the portable nets. Yeah, the portable
Okay.
nets. One portable net shuts down tennis.
Okay.
That was my other one.
Right.
And the third,
But one pickleball game over there now currently shuts down tennis.
They don't play pickleball over there. Rarely. It's not set up for, while the lines are there, as Barb has pointed out, the courts, the nets are too high and you can't do around the side shots. So you're right, one would shut down tennis. It never does though, that I've seen.
We've played there. I did.
I played on that tennis, I played pickleball on that East Court way too many times. It's really hard work. You really have to run.
Yeah, so what we're really talking about now is anecdotal evidence. So, and I guess it brings out the engineer in me, because I used to do work sampling as a young man, and I don't know the answers to all these things because no one's actually done a formal study. I just can tell you my anecdotal evidence too, and the times that I've been at Letort, I've not seen anybody play over there. Does that mean that there have never been anybody that plays over there? Of course not. I'm sure there have been, but it's never stopped us from playing.
I have a question. Barb, is the primary purpose of adding additional courts so that larger groups, because since pickleball is more of a community type thing, or it's like large groups, is it more so that all those people can be playing, so you can have large, when people are playing, you can have larger gatherings where there's more games going on, where, or do we just need more courts? If we had more courts, would it be just as well if someone just had to go over to, say, Moreland and play pickleball over there because the pickleball courts in Letort were being used?
Okay, first of all, the courts at Moreland are tennis courts, they're not lined for pickleball.
Well, I'm just saying, if we were to line, would it be just as well to have lined pickleball courts there?
Okay.
Or do you really want the pickleball courts grouped together so that larger groups of people can play?
I want them grouped together because it's a very social sport and people are waiting to play. And the other reason why is because I'm a tournament player, and so we used to have several groups of people that played at Letort that were my level, and we don't do that anymore because we don't want to interfere with the Carlisle group. We don't want to take a court away from them. So I travel. I go to Mount Joy, I go to Hanover, I go to Mechanicsburg. I'm paying taxes here in Carlisle, and I don't use those courts as much as I would like to, and same with some of the other people. So it would be like, I don't want to go there. I want to say that yes, there would be a lot of more people using the courts at Moreland or at Letort because you wouldn't have to go elsewhere to find your level of play. You could do it here. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Those places you go, are they dedicated pickleball or are they pickleball tennis?
Mount Joy, there are 2 courts that are tennis that are lined also for pickleball, and nobody plays tennis there.
Okay.
In Hanover at Myers Park, there are 6 dedicated pickleball courts. And now there's a new place that opened in Lancaster that has 8 dedicated pickleball courts. So, we're starting to go there as well.
So, This is the
I'd
way-
like to stay here. We used to have a lot of people here that were my level, but they're going elsewhere also. So we just don't have the room. We don't have the room for the people. That's all I have to say, you know? So we work so hard to get these courts, and I feel like no, I never use them except Diane and I go over and practice a lot. Yeah,
You're
and
a
all-
victim of your own success.
Barb, do you have the, and maybe this, I shouldn't ask this, but I'm gonna ask this anyway, but do you have what's the donation? How much does it cost to line those courts and remove those? Do you have
I
do you
did
have
not. I was hoping you would help me with that. I know
Oh,
at one point you said something like 250, but I don't think that, you know, it's just something off the top of your head. So
Well, yeah, I gave you those figures. That's what it cost whenever we did the painting prior to the pickleball, dedicated pickleball courts. I want to say it was like $250 per court, something like that. So,
okay.
I have one more question for John. Is the and I think someone said earlier, is the Latort, since the Latort was just resurfaced, is it kind of the premier tennis court that we have in Carlisle from in our parks, or are the ones at Moreland just as nice?
I would say that two of the courts at Moreland, the courts themselves are just as nice. The reason the Latort is so popular is its location and its venue. It's just that's why everybody loves Latort Park. It's kind of set off to its side. It's quiet. It's just a nice venue and location. There are trees there for shade, and of course, when the sun's up above your head, there's not a lot of shade no matter where you are. But there are trees there that give you shade. It's just a nice location. But from a court standpoint, there are two Moreland courts and the one Latort Park are equivalent, I would say. Two Moreland courts are not equivalent. They need the makeover, as I think Andrea had mentioned. So those are probably the three best courts in Carlisle. The two Moreland courts that were redone and the Latort court.
and the Moreland South Side, that was just redone, I think it was last year, 2019 or 2018. I think it might be 2019. And then the Latort was 2017. So Moreland was more recent. The South Side of Moreland is more recently resurfaced.
Okay.
And just, yeah, and going along with that, let's say we were to create more pickleball courts, that is just another expense down the road, you know, for resurfacing and that type of thing. And one of my things that I have to do is try to make sure we're spending our tax dollars wisely, and $60,000 to $90,000 to resurface tennis courts. That's a change.
So,
Yeah, I mean,
What-
I
what-
agree it's a lot of money, but I also think that, I think having nice facilities, I mean, that's a big deal to communities. And I think, continuing to enhance our facilities for growing sports like pickleball, I think should be on the top of our list, I would think, because we do have there probably are lots of courts that aren't, whether it's basketball courts, tennis courts, that just don't get used that much, and we should. I like John's point of, what's the long-term plan? Do we want to eventually have more pickleball courts in Carlisle? More, I'll say, not state of the art, but, modern, nice pickleball courts? Or do we just want to have two and some other courts, some other like half courts or whatever?
Yeah,
Good point, Eric.
funding is always an issue, and if that's something that needs to happen, that needs to happen. But we have to be able to maintain what we currently have as well.
Yeah.
I also have a question about the lighting, because I know, Andrea, you've mentioned that Latort is the only tennis court with lighting. So I was just curious how relevant really that is for either pickleball or tennis, do many pickleball or tennis players play in the evening after dark? I mean, are those courts ever used? You know, I know obviously pickleball is not playing, you know, at Moreland or anything, but do any of you play after dark?
Yes. From my understanding, yes, because we get calls a lot that the quarter, you have to put in a quarter to get the light, that the lights aren't working. So, and they're used a lot. I am considering not replacing the standards, but replacing the fixtures to LED, hopefully within the next couple of years, to have better lighting. The quarter machine itself is still usable, and that was put in like the 80s, and it does still work most days, but we do have to work on that some. But
So pickleball does play at night. Do John, you may know, do many tennis players play at night as well?
I can't answer that. I personally do not, but I do know that tennis players play it in the evening. Now, how many of them use the lights at Latort? I just don't know.
Barb, do pickleball players play at night?
Yes, we fed those quarters into that. And the one you have to put 3 quarters in before the lights come on, and the other one's just 1 quarter, and then you don't know when they're going to shut off. Now at Creekview, where they have lights and you feed quarters there, everybody contributes their quarters, and there's a timer so you can see how much time's left. So when it gets down to like 20 minutes or 10 minutes, everybody starts feeding those quarters again. You know, I can tell you at Creekview, there's 4 courts, and they were 1 tennis court, or 2 tennis courts, and they turned them into 4 with the backdrop of the tennis net. And when I go there, and I'm probably going to go there tomorrow morning, typically, you know, that accommodates 16 people. Typically, there's 30 to 40 people. So you stack up your paddles, to see who's going in next. It's that popular, and in the mornings and the evenings there, because the lights work really well. And I have fed quarters into the Carlisle. They just don't light the courts very well. So
I'm looking at the LED. I think it's the estimate for the LEDs for next year, if I can get it into the budget, is about $2,800.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Mechanicsburg, Soldiers and Sailors Park, which were the first 2 dedicated courts in the area, and then we were the second 2. They have solar lights, so they automatically come on in the park, which actually makes the park a lot safer. They have two pickleball courts, then adjacent to that is a basketball court, and adjacent to that's 2 volleyball courts with artificial turf. So they have lights on all of them, and that just automatically comes on at night.
Did they have any issues when they changed, you know, because pickleball is relatively new to all the other sports. Did they have any issues when they did that, you know of?
No.
Adam Ricky has, is that East Pennsboro, or is that Hamden Township?
That's East Pennsboro.
Okay.
They just turned 2 courts into pickleball court. They have 4 pickleball courts there. It's kind of a temporary situation because there are tennis courts adjacent to that. Everything's all cracked up, and they're going to eventually resurface everything, including the pickleball, but they wanted to get that up and running because it was so popular that they had their own people paint the courts, and they painted them with regular paint. So they're kind of slippery and the ball kind of skips off, and people have complained, but it's another place to play, and it's being used. And it's going to be even nicer when they do resurface everything. So they've been very accommodating.
Maybe to wrap this up, I guess what's the summation that we want to just decide, or is it feasible to turn the one tennis court into pickleball tennis at Moreland or excuse me, at Letort, and go from there, or I'm not sure what the next step is. Just a go, no go, or just work with the lines you got now?
Well, the next step would be, obviously, if you make a recommendation not to accept the donation for the lines, we would just not consider it this month. But if you were to move forward and make the recommendation that we put lines on the tennis court, then I would take that to Borough Council. And I could do that at the August council meeting, which is next week. And that's how that would go. And then council would make a recommendation. So I'm not sure if you all have enough information to make that recommendation tonight, or if you need to think about it more. I'm not sure what timelines we're under. I'm not sure if we're under any timelines. But
You vehemently disagree, John, with what Barb's proposing?
I don't. I think I don't know if she's actually proposed anything. I am trying very hard not to express an opinion and let the board do their job. How's that?
Yeah, I think that's like John said. He also, we want to get along with the pickleball players, so I think it would be. I think we should do our job. I like John's proposal of what is our long-term plan. I don't think we should make a short-term. The first time around, I wasn't here. We selected this place out of conflict with the other neighborhood, which actually had more space and more courts, and we could have got along a little bit better had we put pickleball courts there, because we could have put more in. We have 2 tennis courts there that are run down. So I feel like, by going here, we've limited how big pickleball can expand. And like John said, we're losing tennis courts every time. And to lose one of the nicer tennis courts, I feel like is I don't play tennis, but I understand, it's, while the lines can be usable, it does degrade the experience. And right now they have a top-notch experience when they go and play at that court. And so now it'll be minimized.
There are lines on that court, Eric.
Well, there'll be more lines. More lines are more line. One line, it's just more lines that just get in the way of his. I'm just echoing his concern of more lines, just make it less usable. And also it'll be used more for pickleball, and so it'll probably just not as available as often.
Right.
So
I've been advised not to go back in the past, but since our chairman did and Andrea did a little bit, I will tell you and the other new board members that we were to have that whole pad first of all, we were to have the 2 south side courts at Moreland, which would have given us 6 pickleball courts. That was the plan.
Yeah.
Then when some people got angry about that lived in the neighborhood, we looked at Letort. Andrea suggested looking there. We were to have both of those tennis courts resurfaced into 6 pickleball courts. In the end, there were about 6 tennis players that came and complained, and we compromised as a pickleball group and said, well, we'll compromise and dual line the tennis court. So now we're at a point where I almost wish we would have fought for both of those courts that you were supposed to have. But that's in the past. Okay, so that may not be a productive thing to say, but for the new people that are trying to wonder why we went to Letort, we were to have 6 courts there at the time.
I think, I don't know how we do this, because you hate to make a decision on, and back then it was, 6 people, there were 6 tennis players that came forward, and I don't have any perspective on how many people play tennis in Carlisle, how many people play pickleball, how much those courts are being used. There's got to be a way for us to survey that area, there's got to be a way to do that just to get a better representation of what's going on versus, just kind of.
I do agree, Eric. It is hard for me as a math person. I'm a math teacher, to make a big decision based on not having data to support. There's a significant. You're right. I feel like we don't have that. I don't even know how you collect that. But I do agree, Eric, that I think it would be relevant to have a little bit more data on how exactly the courts are used, who, when, how often. I think that would be helpful, and I don't know if that's possible to get that kind of data.
May I comment? I think you clearly could get data on, how many times a day it's used by whichever group. But it seems to me one of the things that would skew any data is the fact that we have operated on a first come, first served basis. So let's assume we have a lot of pickleball players around one day, and it's bled over onto the east side court, and tennis players drive up and want to play. They're not going to get out of their out of their cars, because pickleball players are there. Similarly, if you have tennis people on the court already, but you have pickleball players, I don't know, you're going to have, you can, get some data.
It would be hard.
But I don't know how shall I say, meaningful it might be to you. Again, and I don't want to change this business about whoever gets there first gets to play first, or gets to play till they quit playing.
I heard it mentioned that there was an email list for pickleball with somewhere around, was it 150 members on the email list?
Getting close to 150, yes.
I was wondering if there's any equivalent email list or something along those lines for tennis players in the Carlisle area or any central association.
There is no tennis association. I tried to express that when I started. I'm just kind of representing my views as a tennis player. I've talked to a few people, but I guess tennis is not as social as pickleball. We have our own groups. We have a group of anywhere from 10 to 15, and other people have groups, but we don't. It's not like we merge a list and have a tennis association. So I don't have an answer for you on that.
Understood.
Whenever I had first been talking with both Barb and John about this, I asked them the same thing. At least I know I asked John, how many people playing tennis? The only, like a survey, I'm not sure, maybe we could, as Parks and Rec board members, take different days and go out there and we'd have to literally mark who's playing what and when and how many and at certain days. That's really kind of the only way I can think of at this point to do any type of survey of who's playing what and when.
And even so, like Jane had mentioned, there's a potential to have skewed data because of things like maybe since there aren't so many pickleball courts available, pickleball players may not choose Latour and may choose to go to other places to play. So maybe there's more interest than there is expressed interest in pickleball in the area.
Well, it sounds like if the board members are here, it's a no vote or a table vote.
May I ask a question of Barb, not Andrea? May I ask a question of Barb?
Go for it.
Barb, the donor, the generous donor, has she or he set a time limit with regard to which this beneficence might be available?
Not that I know of, but
Okay.
no, not that I know of. I would
Okay.
I would have to find out.
Okay.
Oh, I had a question I forgot to ask. Are the lines they would be painted on, and I assume once they're painted on, they would not just be easily removed, right? Like if it just created conflict. And I was going to ask if there's a way to do it more temporary than permanent.
Well, if you painted them one, that would be permanent. I mean, the only way to take them off would be to unpaint them. Like we're gonna, if we were to do this, and like we do with the gold, we've taped courts before when we've had our tournaments, because Parks and Rec has hosted pickleball tournaments there with the same setup that Barb was talking about. We've taped courts there. I mean, I don't know if that's something we can do, but sometimes whenever it rains, the tape comes up. That happens at times. The only temporary thing I could say would be taping.
Yeah, I would, based on the experience we had early on with Tort, with the tape, it doesn't work. Even the rain might do it, but whenever you're, running across that and skidding and playing on the tape, it comes up. It just comes up.
Yeah.
You have to paint it.
Yeah, I know we're at a standstill. I guess, the long-term plans, that's long-term plans, we could plan that, but that long-term probably means 5 years. If it's going to mean that the Carlisle Borough, if, you'd be asking for Carlisle Borough to raise funds for any of this, that would be at least a 5, maybe 6 year endeavor. What we're talking about now, for painting the courts, it is temporary, but it is something that would allow for more pickleball play and allow for tennis play. And there are other tennis courts available within our park system, but I don't know what we need to do in the meantime, if we need to table it, what type of information you're looking for. That would be helpful to know, I guess.
So if I might ask you, Andrea, you have 3 board members that are absent today?
Correct.
So there are 8 board members and you have five here, correct? So
There are 7. We have 4 here. Bob is a board member, Michael,
okay.
Whitney, and Eric.
Okay.
And then the 3 that are missing are Katie Maxwell, Jordan Heckman, and Pam Fowler.
Okay. Brenda
Landis.
Yeah.
She is the Borough Council liaison, so she's a Borough Council person.
Okay, I thought she was.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha. So you do have, the people who aren't here, would they have a vote?
Yes. Yes, but
And, excuse me, because I'm not familiar with, the workings of your board. Would they be privy to the recording of this session before they voted, or what would be the way that you would inform them as to what everybody said?
well, we have minutes. Melinda Hench is the secretary. She takes minutes. I do believe that the session's being recorded. So
We heard that.
And I usually I can put it up on YouTube so then they can view it. They can view the whole thing.
Okay.
If that helps.
So
how
they
does that
would have a
work?
vote. That was my question.
Yeah, how does that work, Andrea? Then we technically don't vote tonight if we're waiting for them, correct?
correct. Yeah, we would have to table it, and then in the between now and our next meeting in September, they would view it, and then we would put this on the agenda again for the September meeting, and we'd have discussion again, and then go from there. But they would be up to speed on what we were talking about.
I personally would be in favor of doing that. I just think this is a big decision. I don't want to, like, Eric and many have said, I don't want to rush into a short temporary fix that doesn't potentially solve or help solve what is obviously a larger issue it doesn't seem like it got any better since 3 or 4 years ago, and not, so I'm hesitant to just slap another quick fix, especially with 3 other members not here.
Okay. Is there a motion to table
So
this?
I
discussion?
will make a motion to table it until we have hopefully our full board next month, or maybe more of the board. So I will make a motion to table it.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
That tables that. We can move on to our, the rest of our meeting.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I can drop out.
You can,
Yes, and this will be on the agenda for for September. At this point, I don't know if it'll be a Zoom or if it will be in person. I don't know.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you.
thank you for your comments, John.
Inviting me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you, Jane.
Before you go, Barb,
Mr. Chairman, what else is on the agenda? I may or may not leave.
Okay, it's your prerogative. We vote on the minutes, we have a director's report, and then we have old and new business.
It might be useful for Andrea and me or John to figure out if there's any other thing for which pickleball players might be competing with money from Borough Council. And if anything like that on your
Your
agenda?
prerogative to attend, to stay with the meeting or not. It's an open meeting.
I don't have any budget information for the agenda this month at all.
Okay, then I'm leaving. Thank you for permitting me to participate.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right. Now we'll have, glad that was first. And the
Forgot there was other
next,
stuff.
Pardon?
I forgot there was other stuff on the agenda.
we got to approve minutes, and you got to tell us your director's report that we've read and hopefully read, and maybe the rest of the meeting will go a lot faster. Yeah, and Whitney and Eric, your points are taken. You can say what we said, but it was a very it really got pretty ugly, I must say, a few years ago. And maybe, and I can be maybe at fault that we took a stopgap measure rather, because there were people that we would have had lawsuits. And like I said in that before, we might not have pickleball now, any courts, because they were, you just, I guess you had to be there to hear the, I guess I can't say a lot of the things I want to say, but it really wasn't, maybe shame on me for not being strong enough, but unfortunately we have to live with what we said. But we'll move on, and I appreciate your comments. They're excellent. So I guess next, do we approve the June minutes of our Zoom meeting? Everybody had a chance to look at it, and that was not a contentious meeting. That was,
No.
Let's see, when did we adjourn? We adjourned at 7:41, so it's now almost 8:41. So is there a motion to, is there any questions on the minutes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the June meeting?
a motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Director's report?
Okay, the Stewart Community Center is now open to the public and Parks and Rec staff. We are back in the community center. We opened for rentals last week. Everything is very slow. We haven't had many rentals. We've been working on a health and safety plan that was completed today. For people who come into the facility, they have to be masked and social distance, and we have capacity limits for each of our rooms and the gym. So it's all been a work in progress, but we are up and running. We have our summer day camp program. those numbers are very small. I think this week or next week, we have our largest numbers. I think this week we might have 15, if not 15, 14, something like that. But, usually we're looking at 25, 30 kids per week, but that has dwindled down. And unfortunately, we did not have our Memorial Park Playground program. There just was not enough interest, even though we put flyers out, social media. We were actually at the park accepting registrations. We only had like 2 people register, so we had to cancel that. We do have some of our rec programs going on for this summer. Trying to be social distance and people wearing masks and that type of thing. So things have changed. Our revenue's low from the pandemic and all of that, but we're working with what we can.
I'm curious, Andrea, has the SPY program reached out at all to you or the department about the use of space with this school age program that they're trying to start up this year?
Yeah, I did hear from Gina, the executive director, probably 2 days ago. And I asked her to get me some more information, exactly what she's looking for. I do know that they have at least one space. They probably have more than one, but I know they have this space at North College and A Street, I think the church there. Can't remember the name of the church, but she kind of explained the program to me and that it's free to low-income families, but I haven't heard from her.
Okay, because I know they're sort of in the fundraising stage at the moment, and I don't know if they would have money to rent the space. I don't know how all that works. If she rents, I'm sure she looks for donated spaces, but I don't know if they end up getting enough money if they would rent space or not. But
yeah, I'm not sure. I was thinking they probably would not want to rent space, but that's something that really that would be decided by the borough manager's office or borough council.
Okay.
But she has reached out to me to ask about that. And the Summer Artist Series, I think I mentioned this last month, we are doing it was virtual. This Sunday is our last concert. It went okay. Thanks to Stephanie Taylor, she's on the call now, but she really helped us get through and posted on Facebook and YouTube and Kelsey also. And they had to go out and videotape or video the singers and all of that. So it went as well as it could have gone. The other thing I wanted to talk about is last night at the Borough Council workshop meeting, Borough Council approved a draft and advertise for an ordinance to ban fireworks in borough parks, streets, public right-of-ways, any buildings, any borough-owned property. So that is something that will actually be beneficial to Parks and Rec because we often spend many hours cleaning up fireworks and glass and all of that, around the 4th of July, around Labor Day. So that is in the process of being drafted and advertised, and the public has either 45 to 60 days, I'm not sure which, to review it, and then it'll come back to council, and council will vote on whether or not they want that to be an ordinance. But in the meantime, I am working with the local sign maker to post signs at Moreland, Heverlig, and Memorial, because those are the 3 parks that we this year have had the most problems in for fireworks. So we'll be posting a sign that says no fireworks zone. And we've heard complaints from neighbors about it.
It was big this year. I mean, in my neighborhood, some people set off like a pretty amazing display in the street. I mean, they did clean it up, but it was all over.
Yeah, with this ordinance, They won't be able to set that off in the street, but they would be able to do it, I'm assuming on their private property, as long as it's not, I think, 150 feet away. It has to be 150 feet away from somewhere. But yeah, I mean, I went to parks, and early in the morning, 7 o'clock, there's big boxes of fireworks right along the street, and it's terrible. It's a liability for park workers. It's a liability for kids, whomever is cleaning that up. So, yeah. I think that's all I have in my report.
Does anybody have any new business? I was going to say.
Well, I have a question.
Okay.
Andrea, where are you guys at in your budget process for? I know the borough right now. I mean, because it was last month. I think they kind of did like an overview of the process, and so I assume that you guys are now having discussions about next year and where you guys want to spend money and capital projects and things like that. With us likely having less tax revenue next year, where do you think we'll end up seeing cuts in Park and Rec from a?
It's hard to say. I know that I'm not sure exactly where the cuts will happen, but I know we're going to have to trim our budget. I'm not sure where we can trim it because we're pretty lean. I think we'll be looking at things, like really like the pickleball courts, right? Let's say if we were to have, create new pickleball courts, what the maintenance of that would be, those types of decisions I think will be looked at harder. So I'm not sure how much will get trimmed, but I think the capital fund will be looked at for.
Yeah, so from a capital standpoint, did we have planned capital items that we know would just be early chopping block items, or did we not have a lot of capital planned for next year anyway?
I'm in the process of looking at those. We do have some. Let me see, we have a Goodyear Park Bridge replacement, $42,000. I can see that being chopped. That's the bridge that goes between where the Carlisle Diamonds play, the baseball field at Goodyear Park along Bedford Street, and the elementary school, Leetord Elementary School. It's a wooden. Now it's almost looks like a homemade wooden bridge.
Yeah, I was gonna say $42,000 to replace that seems insane.
Everything is so expensive, but if we would
pickleball.
Yeah, if we would replace it, it would be along the Molly Grub. There would be so many things that you'd have to do. So I would think that would get chopped.
Andrea,
go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, Andrea, can you explain how the CIP works, how it's planned out, like 5 years?
Yeah. Our capital improvement budget is a 5-year budget. So, like this year, if I want to put a new thing on the budget, which the one thing I'm putting on is the renovation of the north side tennis courts. I put that in this year in 2001, but actually it's not even going to get done, or even really they'll consider it this year and put it on the CIP hopefully, but it won't get done until 2025. So we're always looking at like 5-6 years out. The only time something gets put on the next year is if there is a dire need for that. I don't see a dire need for pickleball courts. Like that's not not a dire need. So it would be kicked out 5 years.
What is the role of the Parks and Rec Board when it comes to prioritization of capital items and things that go into the budget?
The Parks and Rec Board hasn't had much of a role in that over the years. It's basically The department heads, they do the budget, and then I meet with the borough manager, and then the borough manager kind of prioritizes things. I meet with the borough manager and the finance director, and then they prioritize things, and then the borough manager presents her budget to borough council in November.
Okay. And so we've not been involved in the past just because it's just not the process, or we've not asked to be part of the process, or how do we get, and even just from like before it gets presented to borough council, like just to review and be able to ask questions about, why we're putting in I'm not questioning a $42,000 bridge, but like, why are we doing this type of thing over a pickleball court, for instance? Like,
Yeah, typically the Parks and Rec Board hasn't been involved in those type of decisions. Over the years, I have briefed council on, or Parks and Rec Board, okay, this is what the project that is on the CIP for, for the coming year. Sometimes it's before our council meetings, sometimes it's after our council budget meetings. And our council budget meetings are usually held in early November.
Okay.
Yeah, because like bigger items, they kind of come through. Bigger items come through during our discussions with the Parks and Rec Board and that type of thing. Hello.
Way more.
Hi.
Any other questions on new business?
Well, just to follow up to that, I think it's important. Because those things are big items, and somehow I think it's important for us to see that information as you guys are discussing it, just for us to kind of be in the loop of what's, maybe some of the discussion points are of, here's why we're selecting these items for. Once it's in the capital, it's really like we don't really have much control of it happening or not, because it's already been approved, it's already in there, and like why would we ever stop something from happening that's already been approved? But I feel like that's where a lot of the, and again, I don't know officially what our role, I guess, fits into that, but I feel like that's an opportunity for us to, I don't know, maybe that's not a role, and it shouldn't be a role, but
yeah, well, the role of the Parks and Rec Board is to hear the community's, what the community wants. A lot of times what's in the capital budget, I'm looking at one from last year. It's pool painting, pool joint caulking, gatehouse stair reconfiguration, disc mower, Kubota tractor, HVAC unit, stuff like that.
So I think to John's point earlier, and I thought when I first joined the Parks and Rec Board, I thought similar things, but I didn't really know how things happen. So I think, us as a board, because we do hear the concerns we kind of hear the concerns as they come up, and they're always typically short-term, like little things. And I think it'd be important for us to, because it is so far along out the process, like we should have some discussion about, what we feel like the community has been asking for, and and we should maybe present to you to say we feel like we should be planning for additional pickleball courts, even if it takes 5 years. At least let's have those discussions where we have some of those longer term plans, and we can kind of influence or at least bring into the discussion things that we hear from the community, whether it's inside or outside.
Yeah, and you can do, we can do that if that's something that you think that the community should pay for. The pump track, is that something, typically it has always been, if a group wants something, it's kind of their responsibility. It has been their responsibility to pay for
Okay.
what their needs are, like the pump track. You know, it's kind of taken upon them to organize and raise funds for that. Now, after, you know, the borough has to consider whether or not we want to maintain the space, and that's where our costs are.
Yeah.
I can
Okay,
think about like the dog park. They've raised their own funds to do stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense, and that actually, you know, it's when the community has a concern, it's their, you know, if it, whatever it may be, if it's pickleball, if it's dog parks, if it's pump tracks, whatever, they bring it forward and try to understand where this fits in the long-term plans. So that's fair.
Yeah.
One question, because I thought about this when you were talking about and maybe we can talk about this next week, and we don't have to go long. The dog park, that's the only thing that we have that requires like a fee. Like it requires you to be a member. Do we consider any of that kind of stuff? Like, I'm not saying we'd ever consider this for pickleball, but like, why not? If you want to play pickleball in the courts, you should be a member. Like if I want a dog to go to the dog park, I have to pay a dog membership fee. I don't know what the difference is.
Well, we have that with the pool. If you want to go to the pool, we have to pay a fee. But the dog park is everything is kind of different. But the dog park, they are the Carlisle Area Dog Park Association. They have a lease at Schaefer Park. So they have a separate lease, and because they have a separate lease, they collect all the fees. We don't collect those fees, so they collect the fees for the dog park members to go into the park. We don't recoup any of those.
Okay.
Any of those fees.
Okay. I just thought about that when you were talking about things. And
yeah, and it's kind of weird because you kind of think pickleball is like tennis. It should be something that a community provides, and maybe it should be, but we kind of already did that when we did the renovation at Leetwood. We sort of did that, and the thought there was that, okay, well, we have at least 4 other courts at Moreland, and you know, we have 1 other court at Leetwood, and the argument from the pickleball people is there's so many tennis courts around Carlisle and not as many pickleball courts.
I am curious though, and I know maybe this is next time, but how Barb mentioned that Latour was supposed to be more pickleball and then it didn't happen. I mean, maybe that's not true. I know everyone has to be careful about what they say, but she presented it as if, you know, something didn't happen that was promised maybe, but.
They say that to me all the time. What we had talked about on the Parks and Rec board was to, you know, because we did not go to Moreland, you know, we had lawyers at the meeting with the Moreland people. You know, we had attorneys show up. We're like, okay, well, we'll go to Leetwood. And then we had the meeting with saying that we would, you know, go to Leetwood. Then we had tennis people showing up. And then in order for the pickleball people to get pickleball courts in Carlisle, they said, okay, well, yep, we'll compromise and we'll do 2 dedicated pickleball courts and, you know, line the tennis. So that's what she's saying there. So she's kind of like,
I don't remember giving up both courts. I don't remember that ever being proposed, really. Both courts at Latour.
I don't know if I remember that. Maybe my memory's just jaded because it's what she repeatedly tells me. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know
some
if
tough
it's
guys
relevant.
here.
It may or may not be relevant, but I mean, is it worth any of us new members looking back at old minutes or anything? Or is that like not something that happens on boards? But
I don't think the minutes would show the reality.
yeah.
Innuendos that came out, you know, it's just maybe shame on me not fighting more. I know one was vehement to go to Moreland, but I mean, in talking to the guys, you know, Mike and Barb, they kind of said, you know, they wanted it now. I mean, you're right. There should be some long-term. Now it's time for long-term because it seems like pickleball is much more important than there is growing, and tennis somebody's gonna have to, you're gonna have to make some hard decisions on that. But at that time, I don't think we realized, we just wanted to get a foot in the door. But it was, you agree with that, Andrea, or you and Melinda are the only ones, other ones there?
I didn't mean to circle back to pickleball.
No, I agree with you. And it was just so contentious. And I, honestly, I talked to those guys, well, you know, at the Giant or something. And I said, what do you want? I mean, they wanted courts. And I said, you're not going to get them at Moreland if you keep, if you put your feet, you dig in. It's like I said, I don't think they'd be there now. You just got to see the people that were coming. Maybe we didn't have the backbone, but that's what personal opinion, what would have happened. That's why I voted the way I did.
Yeah, I can look back at old minutes and provide them to Michael, Whitney, and Eric, and probably Katie. I think Jordan and Pam were on the
They
board.
were there.
Yeah.
Jordan and Pam were there.
Yeah, I can provide those. So I can look into that and I'll send those to you.
If nothing else, it might just at least ease anyone's concerns about, you know, I could see someone saying, well, there's 4 people on that board who know nothing about what happened last time. And maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. Maybe it's not. I don't know, but it might ease, you know, if we could say like, well, you know, we provided everyone with the data from 4 years ago combined with what we know now.
Yeah. And I think knowing that 3 of our members aren't here, I think it's fine that you know, you chose to table. That's fine. When you feel like you don't have enough information to make a clear decision, I think that's fine. But anyway, where were we on the agenda?
I think we're finished with new business. Do we have any old business? Do we have any more?
I got a question. Did we ever get rid of those buzzards?
No. Unfortunately, right before the pandemic hit in March, I had an agreement, and I talked with the borough manager probably in April or May, and because of the budget constraints, she said, you know, we should hold off, but we have not gotten rid of those yet. But talking about trimming the budget, okay, that's one of the areas that we kind of got trimmed, but we might have to revisit that because of the water tower, I don't know, Melinda, have you gotten any calls about the buzzards lately? Yeah, but it'll come again. So I think the contract I have with the Department of Ag is a year, and then we could have them. It was about $6,000 to get them.
Maybe COVID will take the buzzards. I don't know.
So,
No old business?
No.
Shade Tree? Nothing's been happening there. You canceled all the meetings, so.
yeah, we haven't had a meeting since probably January, and I think I might have mentioned this last time, but we do send out shade tree letters. This year we're being a little forgiving because of COVID. Typically the date to have all of the tree pruning complete would be May 31st, but because of the COVID and the pandemic and all of that, we have extended that to the end of the year. So Melinda's in the process of mailing those letters out. I can't tell you how many we have that we have to send follow-up letters to. 25, I think she said. Yeah, 25
Yeah.
people. So that's where we are with Shade Tree.
Any good of the order? Motion to adjourn?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay. Well,
All right.
bye, everybody.
Before everyone leaves, so next month is September, our meeting in September. How do you feel? Should we continue to Zoom, or should we try to meet in person? Anyone have any thoughts?
I think we should do Zoom from this day forward.
Well, you're used to working at home, so you do it all the time, right?
I worked from home prior to COVID, so yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. This is nothing new to you. To me, I've never done this before.
It could at least be even from public, I've participated, I think, almost in I've listened to every virtual city council meeting, during COVID, because they're online. And so just from a public participation, it makes it so much easier to participate in events, in these sessions whenever they're virtual.
Mhm.
So
And
I don't find it that much more difficult to have the meeting virtually than what it is in
I
person.
guess unless it gets real contentious, then it could be. Well, I guess it doesn't get as ugly because you're not face to face with somebody.
Like if we knew it was going to be a big group that's coming in to, if we had when we had the pump track or different things where we know we're going to get a lot of people showing up, maybe we just say we're going to do it in person, but I don't care, but
Yeah, for whatever it's worth, I don't have a problem coming in person. I'd wear a mask if it was a requirement of the borough. I'm fine with whatever.
I'd personally prefer to remain on Zoom, but whatever we decide, I can work with.
Okay. I do know, I think because I think we have to pay extra to advertise that it's a Zoom meeting because at the beginning of the year we advertised that it was held at the community center. I think Joyce has to pay extra to advertise that it's a Zoom meeting. So I can look into that, but I don't mind the Zoom meetings either. It gets a little funky whenever everyone wants to talk at once. That's the only weird type of situation, but I mean, I don't mind Zoom. So we'll figure it out, see where we are in September, go from there.
I think the group on the board is pretty civil, I think, from the group we've got.
Yeah.
We can do it. It'd be nice to meet once in a while, or if something comes up. Who knows the future? But
yeah, and the one thing is, if it is contentious and there is a lot of people in the room, that's probably when we don't want to meet.
True.
So many people in the room. It's a crazy world.
Also, we don't know what's going to happen really with schools yet, I don't think. And so if they reopen, then there might be a second spike before we next meet.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And does everybody have the opinion? Am I running the meetings okay? Zooming? Or anybody have any questions? I can do better. I'll gladly listen.
No.
yeah, I'm good.
Yep.
Okay.
Till next time.
Bye.
All right.